My gosh. All right, my adrenaline's pumping. Let's go. All right.
Why is that bride floating in the cemetery?
Why are them their gravestones lit up? What's going on?
Oh, man.
Oh, good. We're recording stuff.
Hey.
You know, being an artist, and Chad, you understand this too. I know Brian already does. When you're an artist, you're kind of like, you're the only guy with the pickup truck and everybody's got to move. Right. I mean, that's the only way to think
That's such a good analogy.
I mean, right? Hey, can you do this for me? Can you make a sign for me?
Yes.
We're getting married. Can you do this? Can you do that? Yep. Yeah, sure. No problem.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, I ask Brian for a free tattoo drawing.
Right.
Because, you know,
that's cool.
How many of those do you get? Like, how many requests do you get for somebody to draw a tattoo for you?
Too many. Yeah. Just way too many.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always have this conflict in my mind because I feel like it's both a compliment and an insult at the same time, because people are like asking you to do things because they see that it's good, but then I'm like, you're so selfish. Just like my drawings because you like them. Like, you don't have to take something from them. You know what I mean? Like, I'm always like, if you want to support me, go buy my book or buy artwork that I've already done. But I
which is a completely selfless statement that you just said.
No, I'm saying on their part, jerk.
You should want to pay me money.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to support me, give me money. You know.
Yeah. Welcome to the Dastardly Dingoes Podcast, a show that celebrates all things nerdy. You'll get an insider's look into the world of comic books, graphic novels, TV and film, gaming and pop culture, as well as the technologies that drive all of it. Now, are you ready to get nerdy? Welcome to the Dastardly Dingoes Podcast, the show about all things nerdy. We discuss nerd news, movies, TV shows, games, comics, and interview the amazing creators who bring it all to life. I'm Brian.
I'm Jeremy.
Oh, gosh.
And I'm Chad.
And brace yourselves, folks, because we're about to get nerdy.
I figured, you know, Chad has the video and I'm doing the audio.
That was awesome, Jeremy.
Yeah, put your chest right in the camera.
That was good.
I like it.
Little placement for
all right, this week's guest is an artist, an author born in Motorcity, Detroit, Michigan. His family was one of the founding families. Fun fact, that settled Detroit in 1701. We have royalty here.
Wow.
The hometown has inspired him and continues to inspire him in his creative endeavors. Ted's passion for storytelling with a combination of watercolor artwork, which is amazing, by the way, and writing have created several book series, namely Retrieve, Albino Zulu, and recently successfully funded on Kickstarter Grimm 101. He is also the host of TED Talks, Ted's Timepieces, and co-host of Drinkin with the Davies, all on the Rising Tide Network. Ladies and gentlemen, dingoes and dingettes, the amazingly talented Ted Davies.
Wow.
So we will have links to all of those things in the comments below.
Absolutely. Go check them all out, because this man's a plethora of creativity, folks. Welcome, Ted. How you doing, buddy?
Very good. I've been called worse, and that intro was awesome. So you guys are, you're going to write all my copy from now on. So
there you go.
Fantastic.
We just tell everybody, just carry that, get it ready. Whenever you enter a room, just play that. And just come in.
This is me.
I'll get you in touch with my publicist, and you guys can go for it.
Yeah, the Michigan royalty is
Make
here.
Make me large. Yeah.
Indeed.
Great.
So
how's your something? I don't know if royalty, but that's okay.
We'll get there.
I'll run with it.
Oh man. So how is 2021 treating you, sir?
Better than 2020.
Good.
Yeah. Things are going well. People are healthy. I've got my shots. Everybody's everybody's healthy. That's the first thing.
All updated on your shots, rabies shots, everything. Good.
Everything's good there. And they,
heartworm.
Yeah. And growing. Right. We got businesses starting to pick up as far as production, not necessarily sales or anything like that, but that's good. I mean, this is a foundation building time right now. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So yeah,
Cool,
it's been
man.
great though. Nothing to complain about. So
Great. Well, we're glad to have you here, and we want to take this moment to officially, I've been waiting for this, officially knight you, good sir, as a fellow dingo.
awesome.
You have now joined the ranks of many others. It gets you absolutely nothing in the real world.
But
It's
it
kind of
feels
like,
nice.
yeah, it's just a
It
nice
does.
title to have. So update your LinkedIn, update your business cards,
I will.
make sure that
Proudly.
you let
Well,
that.
you and Brian, you've already know this. You're part of Ted's tribe anyway, because you were the only one that agreed to an interview with me. So when we had you on TED Talks, so,
I'm on there by default. Awesome.
so you guys are all inductees of Ted's tribe. So you guys are
Cool.
Oh yes, thank you. That's not.
Thank
Well,
you.
what? Hold on. They didn't have to do anything. Whatever, guys.
well. I've been friends
We're
with both
just-
of them for a while on Facebook.
Thank you.
So
See?
you know,
We're just over here being
Gosh.
awesome. That's
Yeah.
really
Oh,
all we are.
shut up! You're gross. Well, Ted, we want to, before we dive into your personal life and get all the nitty gritty dark secrets that you have, we like to just go through a few questions that we ask everybody.
Sure.
First of
Absolutely.
all, being, what kind of nerd are you? Because there's a lot of different kinds of nerds out there. What would you classify yourself as?
I am the nerd with the hot wife.
Nice.
Probably
Right.
Excellent.
That's I'm the cool guy
Hey,
in the
hey,
room
take
by default
notes.
because of her.
Take notes, folks. This guy's going places, especially with his wife, because that is
yeah.
the best answer that we have had, in my opinion,
Yes.
Yeah.
the entire
Um,
show.
That's
You know,
good.
I am I'm not Ted Davies. I am Christine Davies' husband. I think that's
That's
kind
right.
of how it
Some
rolls.
arm candy.
Yeah,
Yes.
right. I'm just a mere participant in this, crazy thing we call
that's
a relationship. So
yeah.
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. I'm the
Oh.
cool guy. I'm like, how the hell did he land her?
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
so
cool.
cool.
That's
Very
great.
cool,
That's
man.
awesome.
All right. So, what about movies? What are your top 5 movies of all time?
Okay. I'm older than you guys, so I was at the original screening of Star Wars New Hope. So 1977, I was 6 years old.
Mm.
It is still the mark it down because that's it. I mean, that's the first one. The direction for my life was built off of that insanely just an incredible experience. I don't even know where to begin when you're 6 years old. And then I'm going to move around a bit here. So Star Wars, New Hope. Do we go through the list or what's
Absolutely
Yeah.
go
Okay.
through the list.
Yep.
I'm going to jump back a little bit to, do you guys like Wes Anderson movies at all? Anybody?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Budapest Hotel, one of the funniest
Nice.
freaking movies. Love that movie.
It's so good.
Rogue One, back to the Star Wars. Rogue One is a whole nother leap for me because it was for my kids and everything. It was the completion before the new. I mean, I can't say enough about that one.
It's in the. I think it's in the top 2 for me.
Yeah.
Of all Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
Oh, for
I
sure.
agree.
Yeah.
Which is insane because there are no Jedi,
Mm-mm.
right?
Right.
But the blind guy's
Well-
a Jedi.
Yeah. Right. He's just a bad Jedi.
He's done have a
And
lightsaber.
I should have said, right, and rightfully so, I should have said Empire Strikes Back. But if I had it would be the first one. It's the full effect of, oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a unbelievable. It was to be born in that time frame,
Yeah.
and then seeing it in the line, being in the line, and remembering.
So you had the rare experience of being shocked in the theater.
Yeah, and it was a massive theater. I was little anyway, but it was huge theater.
So do you remember that moment when Vader tells Luke that he's his father? Do you remember how you felt?
Well, I was older then, but yeah, I was.
Yeah.
I think like 10 or what was it? That was 82.
Yeah,
Came out. No, it was 80, 81.
I don't remember. I wasn't born.
So okay, I was 10. But yeah, I do, and I remember it. I remember Luke, I'm your father.
Yeah,
Not the way they say it now. I remember it the first way.
yeah.
I'm telling you, it's different now. Anyway, we won't go off on a whole nother subject. on that.
The Mandela
It
experience.
is, I'm telling you.
Yeah, the
I'm telling
Mandela
you.
effect.
If you're German though, you should not have been super surprised, because
Oh yeah.
Darth Vader is German for Dark Father. I mean, like,
Yeah, Yeah.
Looking back, I guess, hindsight is 2020, but trying to like put yourself in that experience.
Right.
But we don't know whose father. That's the thing. You don't know whose father that was. Could have been Han Solo. Could have been weird. Could have got real weird. Could have been Chewie's father.
Bum, bum, bum.
Yeah. You went there
because you don't know what he looks like underneath that suit at that time.
Right? Yeah.
True.
I mean, it was
he could just be a Wookiee that speaks English. You don't know.
And we didn't really, we had books. We didn't have TV shows, anything. We didn't have any, the internet or anything.
Yeah.
So
you had that holiday special though.
The only thing about that was great was Boba Fett's drawing.
Yes, it is. John Celestri.
Yeah, John's awesome.
What a lad.
Yeah, but as far as the experience of that, I don't think. I mean, because it is transcended with my kids. My kids are in their mid-20s now, and they were just reared on it. It was something that it wasn't a babysitter putting in the VHS and having them watch it while I went and did something else. It was a full effect. It is such a surreal experience to have that many years. It's a very touching thing, at least in my eyes.
Absolutely.
So as far as comedy, I think Raising Arizona is still my favorite.
What a good movie.
Nicolas Cage, that is still my favorite.
Yeah.
And then the last one, you guys probably have never heard of this. It's an Irish movie. It's called Waking Ned Divine.
Oh no!
And it's a movie. It was made in 1999. My dad was a Welshman. He was from Wales, so that kind of humor is hysterical for us anyway. So the story goes, it's this Irish town, middle of nowhere in Ireland, right? And the guy Ned wins the lottery and he dies the same night. Well, a couple of his friends find him the next day, and he's got the winning ticket in his hand. So they all end up, the whole town is in on it, and they pretend one of the guys that found it is Ned, and then they have this huge conspiracy. It's hysterical, and then they split the winnings. It's a great.
That sounds like a great movie.
Hysterical movie. Yeah. It's called Waking Ned Divine.
All right, here's a new segment we're going to introduce called Begging and Pleading. It's where we're going to hit you with facts like we've had over 25,000 views on our channel, which is amazing, but only 10% of those people have subscribed to our show, which means we've got the vast majority of people coming and watching and then leaving. We want you to come and want you to watch our videos, but if you like it, just take the time to click on the like button, hit subscribe, hit the bell notification, share with your friends. It means a lot, and it helps us to continue to do what we're doing. Have you done it yet? Okay, go ahead. I'll wait. Please. Please. Just subscribe, please. All right, end of rant. Back to the show.
It is, I think, the best. It's got some really great heavy hitters as far as actors in it, actresses. So, anyway, I wanted to be a little different. I don't want you guys to Alien, Hellboy,
sure.
But anyway.
No, that's a good list.
It is. It's a great
Makes
list.
you think. So.
Chad.
Oh, my turn. Sorry. I literally was looking.
It wasn't me this time.
It wasn't totally me this time, Jeremy.
It was totally me this time.
I didn't know if you were like spaced out or if you were like.
I'm over here. I'm looking at Ted's Instagram and Facebook.
He's stalking
all
you.
this stuff.
The man is right here.
I know. I want
to,
give me some.
It's all good.
Being involved, come on. All right.
Chad, I mean, one thing though, that transparent creation that you're making right now, dude.
Uh-huh.
It's awesome. I mean, it really is cool.
Don't compliment him.
This is no. Well, as an architectural designer and just an engineer mindset, I just like that kind of. It's almost got like a divine line to it. The divine, the proportions are, whatever. Brian. All right, whatever.
Ted, I just want to say you are now my favorite person of all time. I'm glad you enjoy it. Thank you.
And I didn't even go to theology school with him, Brian.
I know it's not art for everyone, but I'm fascinated. I'll get to your question here in just a second.
Let's just spend more time on you, Chad. That sounds like a great idea.
The only thing I want to say is that I'm fascinated by the way that math looks, but I'm not good at math. I just like the way it looks, so I use it as an artistic expression. So that's
all I heard was blah, blah, blah. That's all I heard.
Thank you, Ted, for being kind and encouraging. I appreciate that. So
My privilege.
as a fellow artist that's better than Brian.
Wow.
Just kidding.
Like, it's no surprise if he said better than me, because I'm not great.
Yeah, no, he just went for the kill.
Yeah.
Him and his wall of humility behind him.
No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. No, as a fellow comic book artist and creator and writer and fan of comics, what are your top 5 comics of all time?
Okay. Chad, I'm glad you asked me that. I've got a list. So
Awesome.
Well, okay. The first one I couldn't, I got the original, but it's in the stack behind me. And I can't find it for whatever reason. So I got the anniversary edition, but I own them all. So Hellboy Seed of Destruction. That's first one. The number one. That's Magnolia, you know, like if you guys, if I'm going to put a little props, if you go back to TED Talks on YouTube and see Brian's interview with me, we talk about Mike Mignola being our Jack Kirby.
Yeah.
And that's very true. The next one is these are all a lot of Mignola. Gotham by Gaslight.
Oh, such a good book.
That's a great book. And I'm getting to these are actually probably not in order, so just bear with me for a minute.
Did you hear that, Chad? He may compliment you, but I was on his show.
That's true.
You're not. Yes, the Amazing Screw-On Head. I have a question for you. How'd you like the movie?
The animation?
Yeah,
it wasn't bad.
Yeah, I liked it.
I didn't think it was bad. It was hard to find, but this
really
this
hard
is
to
I
find.
think this is an opus. I think that
I
this is
love it.
probably the best. Get a hold of one of them if you can.
Yeah.
Now the other two are these are very heartfelt for me. These aren't going to be top of the line deals. This is the first comic book I ever had when I was 6 years old.
Oh,
awesome.
so cool.
And it survived. I can't believe it, but it survived.
That's awesome. So that is like the actual one.
Yes.
Like you didn't just go out and rebuy it. Like that is the one you had.
This is from Checkers Bookstore in Detroit.
Oh,
so
so
cool. It's not even it's not even a good number one. You know what I mean? It's just it's the reprint.
It was well loved.
For me.
It doesn't. Yeah, those kind of comics, it doesn't matter because it has such nostalgia. Like I remember the first comic I got too. Just
it's just. I mean, I remember buying this or having my parents bought it because I was 6, and there was a C3O and a R2D2, the first action figures that came out right alongside of it, and I got those too. I still have them, and
That's awesome.
it's a whole. You know, I'm just such a sucker marketing wise. I mean, I'm a Lucas kid. You know what I mean? It was just. But you know, and then this one here, Shogun Warriors, number one. Okay. And the reason why I picked this one out is, you know, they're memories. I remember going to Livonia's store. Livonia is a sub of, it's like a suburban city next to Detroit. Livonia is. And they had a mall. And then when I was 9 years old, I bought my first comic. I had enough cash to do it on my own. That was my first comic, Shogun Warriors. Nothing fancy. This was in an era that, you know, they were bringing a lot of Japanese toys over, and you know, I was younger than that. I was 8. I was 8 when I bought that. But anyway, so those are the staple diet, small portion of what I've collected over the years.
Man, so you have been a comic book fan since day one, pretty much.
I'll tell you about Nerdum in a minute, dude. You're not going to believe how I used to carry these around when I was a kid.
All right. Well, let's jump into it. So tell us your story. How'd you get into like going from that kid who, you know, loved comics, still have your first comics, like from that point to now creating comics, having successful comic on Kickstarter and hosting a plethora of shows on YouTube. Walk us through that story.
Well, you kind of talked about me being from Detroit. That was our family, the founding families in Detroit were Trottier, Cadillac. My mother's family were Trottiers. And one nice thing about being raised Catholic, which I'm no longer part of that religious sect, but being raised Catholic, I had aunts that were nuns. So, and the Vatican made them document everything. So we knew our family lineage from almost, I think, to the Mayflower, which is great. But seeing the bookwork on Cadillac and all the different things that happened when he came here, and the bargemen and all these other people that were here that helped him, and how our family was all involved with the development of the city. Fantastic. So my roots run deep in Detroit as far as that. But it was different. My parents, it was an older Detroit when they were there. They were older. They were the silent generation. My parents were both raised during the Depression. My dad was in Europe, in the UK, in Wales, when the Blitzkrieg was going on. He was a young boy. And my mom was in rural Indiana here in America. So I got to see both sides firsthand of what they went through.
Yeah.
The rationing on both sides of the pond. I got to see all that. It was pretty neat. But in that, being raised in Detroit, it was different for me because it was an older Detroit. They had been there for a long time. They'd been there through the riots. They'd raised other kids, my brothers and my sister. So they got to see, and my brothers and my sisters were all moving out. They were already gone. And I was there. There's 12 years between my next sibling and me. So I'm in midlife crisis, is what we like to call it. Yeah. We don't like the word mistake. My brothers like using that word, but I like midlife crisis. Anyway, so fast forward, I went to Catholic school, very sheltered pretty much. I mean, it was two blocks down from our house. We went and I walked to school, came home, watched Spider-Man on TV, played with my Star Wars toys and comic books. Comic books were a mainstay. I didn't want to read. I hated reading books, but comic books I got into. That was something that totally made a lot of sense to me. And the coloring. My dad was an artist for many years. He worked for Soupy Sales, which was he was a big comic back in the day. And my dad did all of his photography work in that. After that show got canceled, Ford picked him up, and he was a car designer. So I always had this.
Oh, cool.
I was involved with. We would know five years ahead of time when the cars were coming out, and we would have our neighbors and everything. They would come over. They would have these brand new cars wrapped up in leather, so you couldn't see them. They'd bring them in. Everybody get in the garage. It was such a cool environment.
So cool.
That is cool.
Yeah. And it was an era where my dad, they were airbrushing motors. They didn't have CAD back then. CAD was just coming out.
Yeah.
And so it was a really cool, I could walk right into Ford, no problem. They'd let me in, walk down there. Now it's, they have to give your blood type to get in there now. But, but it was just a great experience. The creative minds that were around my father, they were awesome. So supportive. And, my direction where I wanted to go in architecture or, car design or whatever, I had a world at my feet. So, and not many people get that. And my parents are always like, don't think that you're any better than anybody else. You're not. My dad was like, if you ever cross that picket line, if you have to work in a factory or whatever, work for Ford or whatever you're doing, if you cross that picket line and they're on strike, he said, I'll disown you. He said, those people work in terrible conditions. Mm-hmm. He said, you have no idea what some of these people go through trying to make the ideas that we come up with into products that you can drive. He said, it's unbelievable what they go through. And he said,
my dad's a quality manager for automotive company. So
you understand. Oh yeah. Yeah. And you see it. It was one thing, they were my parents were pretty well off, but they were like, you're not, that is not you're not better than anyone else. You make sure that you help as many people as you can in your life. You are here to serve, and that was something that really stuck with me. I hated that growing up because I was like, whatever, what do you know? Right. Yeah. Of course. Apparently they knew a lot. Yeah. So, but anyway, so in Detroit though, it was interesting because I was kind of an anomaly like I am now. It was an anomaly because I was a white kid in a black neighborhood. And I went to school with a few white kids, but mainly it was predominantly black. So I kind of had a different perspective, not in a bad way. Yeah. It was a different perspective. It was kind of cool. Now I look at it now, it's like, wow, I had just a little bit of a taste of what so many people go through in life, and I'm like, wow, okay, I get it. I'm supposed to learn from that or whatever. But man, what a great childhood. But it was always very singular. It wasn't, I didn't have a whole lot of friends outside of school. I mean, Brian, you understand it because with your asthma and everything you had growing up, like we talked about, it wasn't for that, but a lot of the kids, it was private school. So a lot of the kids were driven in by their parents. They lived 20, 30 miles away. You know, it wasn't, or Detroit's a huge city to begin with. So, but having said that, once you have a few friends that only live a couple blocks away, you end up congregating with them as much as you can. Well, I had an older sister, and she 12 years older, and she was into sewing, and she had this awesome sewing box. Okay, this is where it gets really geeky. This, and it had locks on it. It was awesome. It was about this tall. It was like, if you know, I swear to God, it was like when Indiana Jones came out in the Ark. That's all I could think about was this. This was like it. This is the Holy Grail is going in this thing. Yeah. So every comic book I had went into this thing, and I'll be damned if this little 8-year-old was walking around Detroit with a sewing bag. I had a target on me, man. Yeah. I had an absolute target on me, but for whatever reason, I wasn't touched. It was anyway. That's funny. So yeah, it was just I wish I still had that sewing box, man. I can't tell you what, it was crazy. It was just nuts when I look back on it now. Yeah. But yeah, so anyway, so fast forward, we moved out to the suburbs when I was a teenager. I don't think I would have survived high school in Detroit. And it was, and I really didn't know what bad was until we moved outside of the city, because then I got to see the younger kids, you know, the parents weren't always home, police cars everywhere, you know, a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol, and, you know, that whole thing. But I had a good foundation to begin with. My parents were really solid as, you know, people. They were really good people. And it was, so I never really got into that too much. And then architecture happened. We got away from comic books like we all do. And I always had that kind of in my mind, but it was like, well, okay, it's kind of kid stuff now, but I kept them because I knew I had a lot of friends that were collectors, and, you know, so then I got into I had a choice. My parents were, you either, you know, you can design cars or you can go to architecture school. What do you want? Or go to art, you know, you can't make it as a cartoonist. You can't make it as an artist. You know, you're gonna be starving. So even though my dad did it, my dad made it. So whatever, you're gonna starve. Okay. So I ended up, my mom Frank Lloyd Wright was a big thing in my house growing up. He was of Welsh descendants, and Frank Lloyd Wright was everything to my dad. My dad was going to be an architect, but he just didn't make it to that point. And so I was kind of ingrained in that. Books after books he would just buy me, and I got my libraries full of them. Thank God, but that he did it. But then my mom was like, okay, well, do you want people to see your artwork, or do you want people to live in your artwork? And that was kind of the thing. Okay. All right. So thanks, Mom. So I got into architecture, and that was kind of my mainstay for 28 years before I got into, I was always dabbling in artwork. You know, being an artist, and Chad, you understand this too. I know Brian already does. When you're an artist, you're kind of like, you're the only guy with the pickup truck, and everybody's got to move. Right. I mean, that's the only way to think that's
such a good analogy.
I mean, right? Hey, can you do this for me? Can you make a sign for me?
Yes.
We're getting married. Can you do this? Can you do that? Yep. Yeah, sure. No problem.
Yeah. Every once in a while, I ask Brian for a free tattoo drawing.
Right.
Just because,
that's cool.
How many of those do you get? Like, how many requests do you get for somebody to draw a tattoo for you?
Too many. Yeah. Just way too many.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always have this conflict in my mind because I feel like it's both a compliment and an insult at the same time, because people are like asking you to do things because they see that it's good. But then I'm like, you're so selfish. Just like my drawings because you like them. Like, you don't have to take something from them. You know what I mean? Like, I'm always like, if you want to support me, go buy my book or buy artwork that I've already done. But
which is a completely selfless statement that you just said.
No, I'm saying on their part, jerk.
You should want to pay me money.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to support me, give me money. No,
that's
but
great.
I understand where people are coming from, though. Yeah. Like, they see something they appreciate,
right?
I think they look at it as a compliment, but
you don't want to offend them, right? You're flattered, right?
Yeah.
Especially when they want tattoo work. I've been very fortunate that a lot of people recently have wanted my tattoos, my artwork for tattoos, which is a weird thing.
Yeah.
Having something on their body until the day that they perish is that I drew. It's kind of surreal. I was
it is super cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very flattering. And I'm completely, I'm very humbled. But architecture was good. I ended up making, I did a really good, I had a huge stint with the Home Depot Corporation. I worked corporate for new store developments and all kind of new production stuff for them. And went through a marriage, flying all over the place. And then figured out what I wanted to do with my life. And that didn't work out. So then I ended up then I met Christine 22 years ago, after we had both gone through really tough divorces, which there isn't really an easy one. But so, I mean, my career was very good. I did a lot of handicap accessibility, ADA compliancy. So I made it better for people that had challenges, made it easier for them to live. And that was very rewarding, both financial and but then, 2008 happened, and the government jobs. I mean, it was like, you were employed one day and the next day you weren't. So it was that was a reckoning, especially in Michigan. It was unbelievable. I've never ever been in a situation financially like that in my life, and it was I don't know what it was like for you guys down where you're at, man. It was a leveling. I mean, I've saw guys that did. I've seen guys do everything, work maintenance, paint houses. I mean, I did everything afterward. I'm like, okay, well, there's got to be a plan B. Yeah, I've always been a storyteller. I've always figured, okay, well, I've got these ideas for my books. I've already been writing. That was one thing I started writing early. And I always had something, this is going to be something I was going to do. And I figured, okay, well, obviously I'm being pushed in this direction. Where do we go? So a few years passed. That was 2010. Building and trying to figure out what we're going to do. Went back to architecture for a while, and then the market started getting better. Then I got away from it again. And paid the bills, got the child support paid up, and then really what happened was Christine and I decided, okay, the kids are in college, let's downsize, let's move up north Michigan, and I'm a big proponent in small architecture. I think small architecture. I'm not saying live in a 9x12 room. I'm not saying that, but I think that 1,000 to 1,500 square feet, bigger the home, the more problems as an architect. I stress that because it's, for me, I wanted to downsize. I wanted it so that it was I wanted it on a lake. I didn't realize we're going to be on a Great Lake, which is pretty freaking awesome. You guys hopefully enjoy my sunrise pics whenever I can get up with the sun. But yeah, that is it. But that's basically when, okay, so now we're doing what we want to do. Okay. So Christine's got her business. She works outside the home too, and it was, I had everything ready to go. I had already had things edited. I was all set to make a move, and that was it. So when we got here, that was time to start doing Ted Davies artistry. Really start.
That's cool. So
that's it in a nutshell. Sorry to, are you awake, Jeremy? Okay, sorry, bro.
Yeah. No, that's just my personality.
Jeremy's just got
you're awesome, dude.
Jeremy's got a recording of him in the background, like saying every now and then, "Yeah, that's cool," but really, he's got like his eyelids painted.
Got the hand on the pulley.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Weekend at Bernie's sort of thing.
It's like Weekend at Bernie's. Yeah.
That's cool.
Well, that's a great story. And there's a lot of points of your story that I feel like fit in with all three of our stories, as far as, how you got into comics and art, and, the having to work full time while also doing the thing that you love, and, trying to manage, like, how long do I do this outside of the house job until,
that's a balancing act. Yeah. That's such a balancing act.
So
I have a real luxury, mainly because of Christine. I mean, I've got she's been such a proponent to get me to the point where I'm at now. And I feel so badly for people that have a significant other that doesn't support them. I stress it. You as my job and I'm not perfect, but my job to help get Chris to the next level. That's what I'm supposed to do here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And she has been just, I can't say, I mean, it takes everybody to help, but really she has just been such a foundation to get me to the point where it's us, you know what I mean? It's, it sounds corny. I know it sounds corny, but it's the truth. It really is.
It doesn't at all. You know, for me, and I know Brian and I have had this conversation before about, you know, that situation where our wives come to us and are like, okay, you need to just figure out what you want to do.
Yeah.
And let's go do it. I mean, I feel very fortunate that, that Sarah has been this, on board with something that, you know, it's like, it's going to take me several years of not making any money and pouring lots of money into it before anything's going to turn around. And, you know, she hasn't like, been frustrated or upset by that once. So
that's awesome. Really cool. And I wouldn't blame her if she was.
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
I see Chris, you know, I said, well, and we're in a little different situation here though too. I'm older and there's, you know, we both built a career and there's a lot of things a little different. But there's always those times where it's like you don't want to pull money out of anything, you know, if we don't have, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not that we're cheap. I'm pretty cheap. I am. But you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
I can understand why should we get frustrated? You know, why Chris would.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? You know, that conversation, it's like, well, we really need to pay this, but you know what I mean? That kind of, and that's always, don't ever forget those moments because there's going to be times where it won't matter. You'll have enough to deal with whatever, but don't forget that feeling because you're going to meet somebody in life that might be going through that and you might be able to help them, whether it's sharing their work or, you know, anyway,
absolutely. So you've talked about, it seems like you've got a lot of stories that you're developing and have been developing your whole life. And when I read this question, I feel like it should be 2 questions. So of all the stories that you have created, what is your favorite? And then the next question would be, of all the shows that you've hosted, which show is your favorite? So we'll start with stories that you've created.
The stories, I think, well, right now, because we're right on the cusp of what's happening with my Kickstarter is one thing. Grim 101, it'll be over by the time this airs. And we'll talk about that. Retrieve has been really the mainstay of what I've gone through the last probably 5 years. Retrieve is 6 years. Retrieve is really, it's my sci-fi thriller, and it's actually taken on its own life. Things have just exploded with that. Just after 2 books have been done.
That's awesome.
And that we've been so fortunate.
That's cool.
And so fortunate with that. Retrieve has been, I got it right here. This is the smaller part. This is the optioning paperwork for Retrieve, the script for option for that Craig Holland LA is producing right now for Retrieve. So I'm telling you can, things happen for a reason. And don't think that you guys don't have stories that can get people's attention. Retrieve has been I don't think it's my opus, but it's really sweet when you know that you've got that idea that's going to work, and then somebody takes it upon themselves to do something with it besides your own. Yeah. I think Retrieve is probably right now my one I would pick out. And that one's going to be a long term. There's many stories that come off of Retrieve. But yeah, that's a big one. So
awesome.
Yep.
So what about the shows? What show is your favorite?
I think, I did a little bit of a stint of audio podcasting at the beginning of the year or at the end of last year, beginning of this year. And I'm going to get back more into that again. I've done a ton of broadcasting, like on YouTube, but the one thing that I talked about in my podcast was good grief. My dad he always would get things wrong There's an English way of saying things, or a British way,
Mhm.
Welsh way, and then
Yeah.
there's the American equivalent, and it's kind of doesn't seem the same thing. So he would always say, like, Charlie Brown would always say "good grief" when we were growing up as kids, right?
Yeah.
He would always say "good grief, Charles Brown," and I'm like, "No, Dad, that's not how. Don't say Charles Brown. It's not right, you know."
Yeah.
And he's like, "No," he said, "that's what, you know." So he did it though for a point. He was trying to teach me to remember about what good grief was, and in the podcast I talk about my mom. When I was 21, she passed away, and I was home, and everything that dealt with that, and the grief and the abuse of what I put myself through, not being able to save her, that kind of thing. You know,
Yeah.
typical romantic, ridiculous notion that you could do something to help. At the time, though, I was working as an artist, teaching little kids how to draw at a kids school.
Yeah.
So during architecture, for my internships and that. So, and I knew CPR, I was trained in it, you know, so I knew what I was doing, you know, but working on, you know, your loved one like that, though, it was just heartbreaking. It was something I don't wish on anybody. But when I talked about on the podcast, I talked about what good can come of things. So when my dad died in 2012, I used that as an example too. And really the good grief, the thing that was so cool about it is that I touched some people. I touched people that were going through some things that maybe had just lost a parent, and not in the same way I did, but that they started to look for not signs or anything like that, but they started to look for remembrance of these things that they used to do. It was okay to remember it. It wasn't trying to be painful. And I would get emails back from people, you know, thank you for taking the 20 minutes and talking about your what you went through and where you've come from this to learn, you know. And, you know, I'm not there. They would say they're not there yet, but that is so rewarding. And don't get me wrong, I love TED Talks, and I love, you know, bringing on you know, great artists like Brian and trying to see what their lives are about, because that's what TED Talks is. It's about the humanity side of it. But the most rewarding one was, I think, good grief on my podcast, because it was hard for me to talk about. And it's been 30 years. You think that my mom, you know, I think I would have moved past it, but it was good. It was therapeutic, but I learned a lot more about other people trying to help, not just myself, but help them. And that's pretty awesome. I think that I'll take that. I'll take that as a win. But
and can that be found like on any podcasts?
It's on Anchor. It's under Ted Davies Artistry, but it's TED Talks and Inspires.
Okay.
It's on Anchor. I can send you the link, but
yeah,
but it's on Spotify, Anchor. I've got about, I think, 12 or 13 different podcasts. But I ended up because I want to do something with TED Talks and then just do the audio, and I'm like, it just doesn't work because there's too many visuals when we're doing stuff. You know, I'm interviewing, and I wanted something different. I wanted something that once people get back to work and they're driving somewhere, if they do go to work, they can take 20 minutes and listen to something on a Monday morning when they feel like crap and they don't want to go to work. Yeah. It might help them get through to lunch. You know what I mean? Yeah, if I can do that. And that's how kind of what that went through. I'm not this bleeding heart, but I'm trying to make a difference.
Yeah. Ted's like, I really don't give a crap about people.
Hug your trees, whatever. Okay.
So tell us about your latest work, Grim 101. What inspired you to create this story?
Cemeteries. When I was a kid, my mom, having older parents is kind of a double-edged sword. You guys have I know you have older parents, they're older than you, but do you have older parents? Like they should have been grandparents' age?
No.
Okay.
My in-laws are quite old, yes.
Okay. So
I hope they listen to this.
I was going to say, Chad's like, my in-laws are ancient.
They're quite old.
My parents weren't like ancient, but my dad was 42 when I was born. And nowadays it's not a big deal, right? And my mom was 40. But back in the 70s, that's, you know, they're thinking, okay, dad's thinking, okay, I got 4 kids, we're good, you know, whatever. But being a good Catholic family, that's, you know,
and then Ted came along.
Yeah, it happens. Save the best for last. So, what was the question? I'm just kidding. Okay, so, so my mom was the youngest of 15 kids in rural Indiana. during the Depression. Farm community, farm family. So her brothers and sister, I mean, my mom was an aunt 2 years before she was born. If that makes any sense at all, because of the distance from the age group.
Yeah.
So growing up, I didn't have some of the uncles and aunts, I didn't know who they were. And they were dying off, I would be at funeral home after funeral home every year, kind of like birthday parties,
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm like, and I felt really weird going to these cemeteries because I felt a lot of grief. I felt a lot of anxiety. And I didn't even know these people. Why am I grieving? Why am I so sad? And so when I was about 12, I made a note to myself, what if it was a being's job in a cemetery to make you feel like that? What if that was their gig? And I made a mental note of that. And so I was a weird kid. As you know, I'm carrying on. Thank God I didn't have a sewing box with me at the funeral. Anyway, but so fast forward, when we're driving, you get in the car, and I used to cycle a lot. I used to go on long bike rides, and I rode all over America on a bike, and I've done a lot of things like that. So, but I would always stop at these old forgotten cemeteries that people don't go to anymore, that don't visit their loved ones, or they've passed and they've just forgotten about it. And I've always thought about how sad or how interesting it is that it's just this field, it's just a grown over, walled in space, that's not, has corpses in it. It's about it, nothing else. But I thought back to that. Well, what if that grim is what we call a grim for a cemetery? What if he's still there? Or what if she's still there? He just, they're just hanging around. And then I thought, well, we've all had jobs that we hate, right? So each one of us have had jobs that we just can't stand. And I remember a couple of jobs that I had where they gave me a manual and I had to read it. And I just hated the job. I don't know what I was doing there. And I just didn't want to. I said, well, what if we took that being and he doesn't understand why he's even there, what happened to get him to this point. And the only thing that he's got to remind him, he doesn't even know who he is or what he is the book, Grim 101, a manual of how to be a grim in a cemetery. I said, that would be pretty funny.
That's a
and then what if he's really bad at his job and he's actually really funny and people like going to the cemetery to have picnics with their loved one, all that stuff. What if he's a stand-up comic, and that would be hysterical, right? And I'm thinking, okay, so the guy gets, and that's basically what Grim 101's about. It's about a guy named Jim the Grim, and he's floating in the middle of the cemetery a couple hundred years ago, and he doesn't know. He remembers like how to read and how to talk and that, but nobody can see him, nobody can hear him. And he's just floating around, and he's like, he sees this old red leather book on the cemetery floor. So he makes his way down, he, shimmies down and gets down to the book, and he opens it up. It's a manual on how to be a grim. So he figures, well, apparently I must have hit my head or something. I'm supposed to be doing this. This is my vocation. And, he spends the next 150 years documenting what a crappy, he hates this job. He just can't stand it. Nobody, he starts making people feel very lively. The mourners that come in, the grieving widows and everything. But during all of it, he's finding out a lot about himself. He wonders if maybe he's a spirit of one of the cemetery people, somebody that's buried there, and he just doesn't remember. He goes through a lot of things in his journals. And that's what Grim 101 is about. It's set up like a memoir so that you find out Jim's perspective. So he goes through, and it's a small book. There's a series of 4 of them, but it's a small book. The first book's only going to be like 40 pages, and it's an illustrated. It's more of an illustrated journal. Is probably the best way. I don't really call it a prose book. It's not really a comic book. Kind of experimenting a bit. So when people look at it, it's going to be something different. It's not going to be something that everybody's going to have been used to. And I think that's good. But anyway, so Jim, ultimately what happens in the story is he, in the first book, he's writing down all these ideas that he's had over the years about what he hates about what's going on and what he likes about what's happening or what he finds funny. And then he notices that there is a woman that moved into the cottage next door to the cemetery, and she can see him. And it's the first person that's ever been able to see or hear him. And that's how the story ensues. Now, I'll give you a little bit of an inside part of it too.
So that happens within the first.
Yeah, in the first book, it'll be right at the end of it. You'll see that she sees him, and her name's Gwendolyn. And what's interesting about Gwendolyn is she's a Pinterest witch, so she thinks she summoned him. And he's like, "No, I've been here for about a couple hundred." And this is where it kind of starts out. So it's quite funny. So but the second book will be Gwendolyn's viewpoint, her memoir. Her journal of how she sees things, and
that's really cool.
Yeah, thanks. And then the third and fourth will be more the words. What's that?
Going to start? Like, is the second book going to start and do like her history leading up to that same point, or
it'll be from the point that she moves into the cottage?
Okay.
Now, how did Chad? You're supposed to ask me this question.
How did I come up? But Jeremy stole my thunder.
So Ted, how did you, you started this, what inspired you to do that? Well, when we moved up north, we're on Lake Huron, but we're right next to an old cemetery. So I figured, a couple different things. It's either really creepy or really cool. I think it's cool because it puts perspective in life. You've got this beautiful lake that has all the energy in the world that you'd want. And then you turn over a little bit and look out one window in our kitchen and you see this beautiful cemetery. Puts a lot of things in perspective. But I also knew that, and I think that there's a lot of divine guidance. Brian and I talked about this. I'm obviously supposed to write about it because why on earth would I want to retire next to a beautiful old cemetery? I think it's great, but and then, so I needed to write it. I needed to, and man, it's so cool to get inspired from these, from the trees and from all the gnarly growth on these
literally where you live too. That's the coolest part. Like you don't have to go anywhere, take any kind of retreat. You just go in your backyard and stare. And you see it at night. Let me tell you something. If you go out at night and you put a flashlight out there, there's eyes everywhere. Yeah. And it's a deer. And the first time I did it, I freaked myself out. I thought it was like zombie. I'm like, I found the devil. I'm freaking out. Chris is like, what the hell's wrong with you? That's like demons are real. Look at them.
And they're all different heights. And it's like,
that's funny.
Yeah, it was bad. It was pretty scary. Scary night.
That's pretty gutsy too to shine a light right on it. I would usually no, I'm gonna avoid it. I'm gonna go downstairs. You just went right out there. I'm gonna shine the light right in.
You would be and the weird thing is that it's still it's not like in Grimm where they aren't using the cemetery anymore. It's a very well kept old cemetery. But it's interesting to see people that have come to. They'll actually put markers on the graves. They'll put like solar lights. So the first night we were here, I'm looking out the window and I'm like, I'm thinking there's orbs or something out in the and they're not like just one light. They're like multicolored lights. It's like, I'm thinking I'm having a seizure or something, right? And I'm looking out the window and Christine,
why are the tombstones lit up?
Wow, they glowing like that.
What's wrong with the graves?
We've got these great neighbors. We got very quiet neighbors there, but we have very cool neighbors around us. This is kind of a destination spot. And out in the bay, there's an old lighthouse. It's really quite romantic here. It's a really, really cool spot. But we've got neighbors that have this mannequin. And they've had the mannequin for years, and they'll put it in people's boats and stuff up and down the road. Well, one morning, I didn't know about this, but one morning they had dressed it up in a bride's dress and put it in the cemetery.
Oh, awesome. God.
And my brother-in-law had come over. He had left. He camped. I think he was camping out in the backyard. He got up, started the car, and was pulling out. And they put her up on this berm. There's fogs rolling in, and it was just.
I love these people.
Scream with the windows open and the truck running. It was priceless. That's just great. Absolutely priceless.
Tell your neighbors they're the best people I've ever
they are.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. We're going to have them on Drinkin with the Davies eventually.
Oh, yes.
They're a blast.
Awesome. There's a cemetery in a Home Depot parking lot here in Louisville.
Really?
And now that you're talking about like all of these stories, right?
Yeah.
Of, what's behind the cemetery,
Yeah.
this grim and things like that. I wonder who like got assigned to the cemetery in the Home Depot parking lot. Maybe that can be a story that.
I wonder if they're wearing an apron and they have to have their handwritten name on it.
Right. Yeah.
And you can never find them whenever you need something.
Right. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And the crazy thing is it was only like 2 years ago that I even found out about that. I've lived in Louisville my whole life.
Yeah.
And I've been to that Home Depot at least 100 times.
Yeah.
And it's just like bushes.
Yeah.
And I just kind of thought,
I'm really surprised that they could get it zoned. I mean, it shows you the power of Home Depot, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which Home Depot is it?
The one on Breckenridge.
It's Louisville proper, though. It's in the city limits.
Mhm.
Or is
Oh,
it,
yeah.
My brother lived in Louisville for a while. Beautiful down there. I love it down there.
Yeah. Yeah. I heard somebody say that. I'm like, you're crazy. So the next time I was over there, I like went looking, through the bushes, and sure enough, it's a freaking cemetery.
I can see Jeremy like looking around in the Home Depot parking lot.
Yeah.
What is this?
One of the weird things about studying about, and this is why I really like, Brian and I both like this about Mike Mignola, mythology, old legends. The thing about Grimm's in general, and just hearing stories about the development of what these protectors, they go from everything from like dogs that protect cemeteries to these citadel, these incredible, troopers almost, like they protect the graves of. But I wanted something that was a little bit lighter. I didn't want not Neil Gaiman style, but I wanted something was almost personable, that you really feel for being, this guy's in exile. He can't leave the cemetery. So what would you do with one book that you had to read for the last 150 years that you didn't really? Yeah, I mean, it's a real interesting concept. But
when you first talked about it, and when I read about it on the Kickstarter page, it really kind of gives off a Neil Gaiman vibe, especially the Graveyard book came to mind.
Absolutely.
But just, it's like, and this is a huge compliment towards you, because like just the way your imagination works, because Neil Gaiman, I've said on the show before, like he is my favorite author of prose because of that very reason. Like he can take an idea and turn it on its head and present it in a way that you would have never thought of before.
Yeah.
And I really get that with Grimm 101. I love the concept. It's really cool.
Thank you. When I think that we're, bottom line, it comes down to, you'll see the dynamic between the two characters of how they help each other. How and it's very true in life, and how you try to make that person or that being just a little bit better, and I think that, and sometimes we need to have that in life. And I think that's really, it's a very simple idea, but the story, I think it's going to resonate with a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I'm really surprised at how many men like the idea. So thank you, because I've had the beta testing that I did beforehand, before the Kickstarter and everything. It was 90% women. I've had just a ton of, not pre-orders, but interest in it from that side. It's nice to see that dynamic shift a bit. Yeah. So anyway,
in creating this comic book, you chose the medium of watercolor, which I've never really touched watercolor. I'm a bit afraid of it. It's so like unforgiving, I feel like, but it's also, it's one of those mediums that you either do it really well or you really don't do it well at all. It's it's a very difficult medium to use. So why did you choose watercolor, and is there another medium you would like to work on next?
Great question. The watercolor is twofold. I've been a watercolor artist for quite a while. In architecture, I used it a lot for presentations, over the years, and even though I did a lot of CAD work too, but watercolors was my dad's medium, and so he kind of got me more into that over the years. He left me a ton of stuff when he passed away. So I really, in his later years, he actually did a ton of watercolor work. So it's kind of the continuation. I think it was very therapeutic for me to pick that up. And I did retrieve in watercolor too. And I wanted to be different. You've got absolutely, your artwork's impeccable, Chad. I've noticed. I've followed you.
Yeah.
I've followed. Well,
Brian.
I mean it. Brian and I fanboy over you a little bit, but seriously, from my point, I'm telling you, it's absolutely amazing. But like you were saying about watercolor, it's instant. It is instant.
Yeah.
So that point in time, you are never going to be able to change that color.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I do it. So what you see is the moment that I laid that ink or that water down. That was it. Yeah. So I can change it digitally. I can go in once we scan it and lighten, darken it, tweak it, whatever. That's cool. But the originals, that is always going to be spot on, and it's going to look something completely different than say what you've done or what Brian does with his digital work.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted. This is not towards you guys, but stories can be so, and Brian said this on the show with Spectrum comic review, and that you say it best because some art is so good because it has to be, because the story is so bad. It has to be almost, that was one thing with Retrieve. You know what? Yeah, it's not going to be for everybody's taste. The comic book's not. The idea is, and that's what Craig found when he wanted to write the script. Mm-hmm. He said the art's awesome. He said he really appreciates the effort that I put into that, but it's not a Marvel book. It's not an Image book. It's just not that way. It's not. So it was a gamble. I wanted, and I'm a control freak. I like having, it my way. And I like having it so that I can tell my story. And that was really why I wanted the medium. So it was a twofold. So my dad's continuation of watercolor work in the Davies household, all that stuff, go Davies, all that stuff. But also I wanted it to be different from everything else. And I've got a pretty good control of it. It's not, like I said, it's an artist book. It's not meant for, the stories are more important to me than, it's almost like, the watercolor is a guideline. It's not necessarily the rules, more of a guideline. So that's kind of it. And I also use marker. I use a lot of ink. I use, so.
I loved the combination of ink, your line art and the watercolor combination, especially in just your promo picture for Grim 101.
Thank you.
I really
really appreciate I wanted to be different. I wanted to be different. I want people to look at it and say,
it's so
wow,
unique. Yeah, it's so different. Unique. Yeah.
So in a good way, I hope.
In a very good way. Yeah. It catches your eye because it's so unique. It's very stylized, very similar to kind of how, and you'll appreciate this, how I approach Mignola. Just
your mind has to put it together.
Yeah, it's very much
that's an arm, it's a leg, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very much a stylistic thing where the line art, then just, the line art, the shading, the colors, really your mind just kind of fills in the blanks. And it's a really cool
the idea.
Art
you got it.
Yeah.
So, and Chad, the other thing was too, is that as the story goes along, book 1 is going to be very faint lines, very ethereal. Book 2 is going to be a little bit more, maybe a line here, a little bit ink. The 3rd and 4th book are going to be a little bit more ink, so it's going to be more definition as a character develops, and you see Jim go through his evolution, if you want to call it that.
That's cool.
Yeah,
it's going to be, and I did that for psychologically, I did that too, but I wanted it to be something to where it's almost you don't even notice it until the end. So,
yeah, I love that because I love when artists work in layers like that, where there's more to it than just pretty pictures. Like you're putting into it a thought, even in the technique is influenced by the thought of the story is really awesome. The other thing I was noticing too, just in what I've seen online, like it kind of has like an Edgar Allan Poe feel to it for me, like a dark kind of creepiness, which I really appreciate that because the 2 other comic books I can think of that were done in watercolor, that even though it's an amazing story, I just didn't think it works. Whereas I think yours does.
Thank you.
It was like Ascender and Descender. I think it's a beautiful book. I just don't think sci-fi does really well with watercolor, in my opinion. That's just
and that was a gamble with Retrieve, because I didn't know. I knew what I wanted to do, but I wasn't set up for digital at the time. And it was something to where it was just a variation of what I wanted for the story, because somebody might take it later. I figured I knew that it was going to do well, but I didn't know where it was going to go. And I said, just make the gamble. And I would like to do a few things differently, but for the people originally invested in Retrieve, that bought the first copies, I want it to be original for them, because I know it's going to be hopefully worth something someday to where they can reap the benefit of that. And then, that was the other thing too. If you got a good story, get it down, get it out there. Don't wait. Don't, get your, you can always get it edited and restructured and all that. But I mean, the stuff you guys are putting out is, nebulizer and everything else that's happening, it's incredible. I mean, the stuff that you're putting out right now is and the fact that you're doing it at home, it's just incredible. It blows my mind. It really does. I give you props, because it's just anyway, sorry.
It's fun because like right now Chad and I are about to be Kickstarter buddies, because I'll be doing the nebulizer, and then he's about to release or launch the Silence issue 2.
Awesome.
Which I'm super stoked about. By the way, if you're listening and watching this and you haven't gotten the Silence issue 1, go now. Just click pause. We'll be here. We'll wait. And go to the Silence. What is the website, Chad?
SilenceComics.com.
SilenceComics.com.
There it is. SilenceComics.com. And buy that hardback issue number 1. It's beautiful. I have a copy. It's wonderful. You're going to want this. So there you go.
That was the sweetest thing you've ever said.
Well, I give you enough crap, and well-deserved crap, but
you're the worst.
Right, you are the absolute worst. But I got to give credit where credit's due. So there's that.
The love.
So let's change gears a little bit, Ted. So you just when this airs, you will have completed your Kickstarter for Grim 101. So for someone who is looking to start a crowdfunding campaign, either Kickstarter or Indiegogo, what would you say are the top 3 things to consider before you start down that path?
A realistic goal, financially. That's the first thing. Second thing. Well,
let's pause there for just a second. What do you flesh that out a little bit? Like, so what do you mean? Like,
okay, so you want to figure out your numbers. You want to figure out, okay, you got a comic book or a prose book or whatever it is. You better get finding out the print costs first. Get shipping right now, because it's volatile. It can go all over the place, as you guys know. Because sometimes shipping can be really good, and then other times it's not. I'm assuming it's going to be terrible. So I always I flat out know that it's going to cost, okay, we're going to say $10 or whatever on this. If we come in cheaper than that, great. But I think realistically, I think coming out of the gate, this is my first Kickstarter. So I've done a lot of research on goals and setting, and, I've seen people that put $10,000 and achieve it. I've seen people put $500 and don't achieve it. So I really wanted to make sure that there was an achievable number that you could hit within the first, say, 24 hours. $1,000 was that number for me, because I knew what the cost of, have a couple different book sizes, or not sizes, but different soft cover, hardcover, something simple. Does that answer the first question?
Absolutely.
Okay, I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, but basically set your goal so it's achievable, so that people will see the momentum up front, and Kickstarter will see the momentum up front, the campaign. Because if you have the right momentum in the first 24 hours, it's great.
Oh yeah.
It boosts a lot of things. I mean, I wasn't, I didn't even have this in the queue at all, that if they were going to like my project and then tell me that this is a project that we like, that was icing on the cake, man. I wasn't expecting, I was almost in, it sounds corny, I was almost in tears, but
not
I was like,
at all.
I said to Chris, I'm like, we just got the email. I'm like, oh my God. She's
No,
like,
it was so cool when we did our first Kickstarter for the trade for the first 4 issues of Memoirs of an Angel. We landed in the first week a project that they love, and it was
I mean,
it was such a cool experience.
What do you do, man? It's like it's just crazy,
Yeah.
But I mean, you expect the worst, you hope for the best. I mean, that's a guidance. That's just the way I work. I know I shouldn't do that because I should always be very positive, and I try to be.
Well, it's good to have a plan in case.
Well, you got to be realistic. You got to be realistic.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what if you run short, whatever? Okay. You really think that down, but you got to get your budget together and figure out what the minimal amount of money is that you would achieve this. Forget making money for a minute. You're getting this and I know we hate the word exposure, but it's a distribution channel.
Right.
It's a market. And this is where you have to look at it. You don't, it's great that everybody would love your project, and it's great that everybody would, pay $3 for a PDF or whatever. But let's, you got to structure it. So for me, $1,000 was the goal. I think that was a good goal. It was solid. I knew that I had, and you've got to build your market first. You need to have it so that you've got at least 2 weeks out, at least minimum, of having people know that you're going to be launching this thing, and make them part of that. Make them part of that. You've done this. I'm preaching to the choir. But
this is mostly for the viewers right now that are trying to soak up this information right here. The first thing though is be realistic with budget. The second thing is you want to surround I'm in a different situation, first off, financially. So I didn't have to go Kickstarter. Some people are not, don't have that luxury. And that's a very important thing, because the next thing I'm going to tell you is because of my situation. I wanted to go with the campaign manager because I knew that one Lisa Malone management, she is good at what she does. It was my first Kickstarter. I didn't have any clue of how to update or anything like that. And I didn't really want to deal with it. I'd rather pay somebody. Okay. So in that, keep in mind, you've got to make sure that you're covering their costs of what they're going to do to help you. And each one's unique. Each manager's different. But I know what Lisa did for us. And it's, there's percentages that come from Kickstarter. There's also other ways that people make their money, percentages once things fund. So you've got to figure that out. But if you can get a campaign manager that will help you, guide you, do the updates, keep you on track, because for me, you're a little different. You got this down. But for me, I needed that because I've got other things going on, and I need to have that structure. I need to be held accountable. Well, I have a campaign manager. I just married her.
Okay, right. Well, you know what I mean? She's awesome. Robin's great.
She is awesome.
I didn't want to put, it's a good point. Let me stress this. To put more stress on your spouse is not good. Christine, she just is not, she's running a small business too. And she was wanting me to do Kickstarter for years. She's like, you've got a huge following. What are you doing? Why don't you do this for them? Do it for them. Don't do it. Don't think it's a cash grab. You got to get away from that. That mindset was in my mind because I saw some really lousy. I've seen
there's
some
some stinkers out there.
Yeah. And I didn't want to be a TED telethon. I didn't want that,
Yeah.
It's funny, but it's the truth, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we all feel like that. I know that. What if they don't like it? What if they don't like me? I wasn't like that, but it was like, well, okay. So
Jeremy, I think we just got an idea for the next video for Kickstarter, an actual telethon.
Yep.
Let's do it. Ted, you're invited.
All right, cool. I'm copywriting it though.
Microphones.
He's like, gotta get that money.
Yeah. Tedathon. It's a Tedathon. Right. So that's one nice thing about having Ted as your name when you're marketing, Yeah. Anyway. So that not just getting a campaign manager, surround yourself with some type of mentor that is successful and has a proven track record on Kickstarter or Indiegogo. Make sure that they're realist. They're not giving you a line, and go from there. Make sure that if you do that, you make sure if you do a campaign management, you make sure you've got a good contract and you review it. And if you need to have legal people look it over, that's great. But make sure that you're at least got a mentor that's helping you. For me, having a collaborative partner, I think is a deterrent for me. So I don't think that, and it might not be for everybody. You might have a very good relationship. Like I know, like you guys, it's different. I mean, you three, it's different. You're the dingoes. So I expect you would, if we invested in a Kickstarter with all you guys, I know that it would be distributed evenly. That's different. Make sure that you keep your circle tight, because that's not an easy thing, and a lot of things can go awry. Make sure one person's the contact person for money, to make sure that they're not, so where the funds are going and who's held accountable for that. But that's also, that was part of the campaign. I wanted Lisa to have a publicist role, because getting, whether it's this interview or whoever, I needed to make sure that I'm spinning plates. I've got I'm on this variety show in the 50s where there's a pool cue, and I've got a plate spinning here, and that's rolling, and I got to run over here and do the same thing over here.
It's very much that, yep.
And that's the way you do it. I mean, you're working full time,
Mm-hmm.
I have that luxury. I don't do that. I do this full time, but so you got to be realistic, set your goal, get around people that are going to not boost you up, but make sure that you're in the right state of mind, and that you got the proper guidance for updating and making sure that you're going to be fulfilling this, because I saw a lot of people don't fulfill too. I've seen people that have taken 2 years to get things out, and so that was another thing. Those are the two main things. The third one is, I think that the book is a little different. I know that your practice, I think, is probably very good with having the book 75% done, but it's not realistic for a lot of people. I think that you need to be working on that book upon Kickstarter, in my eyes. Yeah. I've seen some people that they don't start it until after it's fun. I'm like, no, that's not fair to your
right. Yeah. A lot of people, group, especially if they have like a creative team, right? Like you have to actually get the Kickstarter funds to pay people. Like that's understandable, but you know what? You're going to have to save up some money, pay them to get like the first 8 pages out there. That way, at least the readers and the backers know, hey, they're serious. Yeah. This is going to actually be something that I'm going to receive.
Right.
For sure.
And make it heartfelt. Make the decision that you're going to put this out for people, that they're part of this journey.
Yeah.
Because if you're not going to do that, then why even bother? I look at distribution's one thing. Having eyes on Grim 101. I've had more people have eyes on this thing, thousands of people, more than I even know, looking at this now I wouldn't have, even with all the stuff that we do online. Now it's a whole nother ball game. I've got so many different people that we are involved with now. So I mean, those are the basic things that I would look at. I know that you have to be realistic about delivery, but that's, again, the campaign manager should help you with that. There's things that Lisa knows that I wouldn't have any clue of where to get the shipping labels and everything else. She's coordinated all that, so I don't have to worry about any of that stuff. So, but it's also an initial investment. I paid to have the video done, which a lot of us do on our own. I could have done it on my own, but I really wanted Jeffrey Hayes on it, because I figured he could do a little bit better than what I could do. So there's money's out to begin with, but that was my choice. I knew that it needed to be, I wanted it done properly. I wanted it to be professional, and I wanted it to fund. I knew that, and I had the mindset that it would fund before I even started it, because I did all the things I was supposed to do. It needs to fund. So
for sure. Now, I do want to kind of park on the video for a moment, because that, honestly, statistically speaking, Kickstarters that either don't have a video or just have a video that are thrown together, statistically, either they're unsuccessful altogether, or they do not do nearly as well as videos, as Kickstarters who have good quality videos. So, you're just propping up your phone and saying a couple words. That's not going to cut it. No. Jeremy actually has done all of my Kickstarter videos, and they've been great. And honestly, I mean,
they have.
They've been excellent. They just keep getting better and better. I'm just so excited about the nebulizer one that we're going to put together this Saturday, actually.
It's going to be such a good program. Can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be great, because if you approach it as like a production, it's going to sell as a very good ad. And that's what grabs people's attention and brings them to your product. So if you don't have that kind of attention ahead of time, it shows that, first of all, it shows, you don't really understand marketing and advertising very well. And two, it shows kind of a lack of, I guess just not integrity, but just it essentially just shows that you care more about your work. I think when you put that time into it.
One thing that really irritates me is ignorance.
Yeah.
And if I insult your intelligence and then ask you for money, that's kind of you know what I mean? What's the point?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Jeffrey Hayes, by the way, Jeff, Plasma Fire Graphics, actually was super, super busy in that time frame.
Mm-hmm.
And he referred me. He said, get a hold of Jeremy.
Yep.
He said, if I can't do it in this time frame, make sure that you get a hold of him. So props to you, Jeremy. So I know Jeff wouldn't have said that if it wasn't legit. And all the videos I've seen have rocked for you. The other thing was too, is that with campaign, Lisa's like, 9 times out of 10, people don't even watch the video. And I'm like, really? And she's like, no, seriously, Ted. She said, I've seen people that they've never even watched any because they're not enticing enough, is what she said.
Interesting.
It's almost easier for them to read than it is for them to watch something for a minute. And that was the other thing too. Keep it to like a minute.
Oh yeah, definitely no longer
than put it on the full gamut. But
definitely no longer than 2 minutes for sure.
Oh, yeah.
But honestly, that's what I do because if I'm usually I'm scrolling through Facebook is most of the time how I find Kickstarter campaigns.
Right.
And most of it is someone has posted the video.
Yeah.
And if I see that little Kickstarter logo, I'm like, oh, cool. I'll watch this and see what if I'm interested.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your your accolades for the work that I'm doing.
Look at that word. So impressive.
That's a good word.
It is a good word.
Man.
Jeremy's like, I know
it's
even
a
know
word.
what it means.
It's a great word.
But yeah, I really appreciate that. Brian can tell you that I am probably almost annoying in the how much I want to like push myself every time I work on a video for anybody that I'm working on it, a project for. I probably have texted him about 25 times in the last 5 days.
Which honestly though, like for me, I need that. Like Jeremy will be the first to tell you, like, I am terrible at answering texts.
Yeah.
It's not because I have all those plates spinning.
Yeah.
And so Jeremy is very patient with me, but there are some times where Jeremy's like, hey, I need an answer.
Linda.
Right. But it's just nice that it's nice to have somebody that that's their responsibility. And it's
delegation is so important.
It's wonderful. Good grief.
And I know it costs, you can't think like it costing me money to do this. It's an investment.
Yeah.
And one thing too, you got to spread the wealth a bit. You need to, if you're fortunate enough to do that. Yeah.
I appreciate that. Yeah. I think that even though, especially with comic books and graphic novels and even books, there are a lot of people that think, or it can seem like adjacent arts, if that makes sense. I think people would expect somebody who draws a comic book can make a video, and it's just not the case. It's a completely different set of software and things like that, and you guys have spent so much time developing that craft,
right?
That you haven't had time to learn all of these other different pieces of software, and so I think it just makes sense more often than not that just hire somebody else to do it for you,
right?
Where you can give some direction and make something that it really highlights what your book is all about.
And I do want to spit out just a little bit of wisdom that was handed down to me, because we have said a lot. If you're watching this and you're saying, man, like Dave said, go hire somebody for like 4 different things? What if I don't have the money?
Yeah.
And the reality is we all do have the money. You have the money. It's how you're using your money.
Right.
So like, are you going to go out and buy, like my addiction is buying comic books and just books in general.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you have the money to go do that? So maybe don't do that, save that, and then hire these people so you can create something. So, I mean, that, and honestly, most of us, not everyone, some people genuinely are, they just don't have it. But most of us are in the boat where we do have the money. If we just spent it differently, we would be able to hire people out and get help, and make this thing actually presentable and much better than it would be otherwise.
Right.
It's totally a risk, and it's a different way of thinking. Like, you're making the investment ahead of time in order to reap a larger benefit, which will pay for the investment.
Right.
But I think that scares a lot of people.
And it comes down to how badly do you want the thing?
Yeah.
How badly do you want to create something? Is it just a fleeting thing, or is it, hey, you're going to put your money where your mouth is,
right?
And you really want to make this dream come true, this story of reality. So
yeah, and I think that we all are at that cliff where we've got the parachute on our backs.
Mm-hmm.
We just have to trust it's going to open when we jump.
Right.
You might hit yourself on the side of that rock a couple times on the way down, but you got to trust that it's going to open before you hit the ground.
Yeah.
And you've got to, I mean, there's a reason why they call it faith. But you try to parameter it so that it's a controlled fall. So you have, there's ways to do it. I mean, there's, be creative as much as you can, but everybody's got their niches. We have, Jeremy, you do the video editing work. It's like the script. I wouldn't know the first thing about writing a script if you put a YouTube channel in front of me and I watched it all day. Mm-hmm. I have Craig. I mean, Craig's like awesome when it comes to that. There's no, I couldn't even compete with it. Or digital artwork. I mean, you guys there's very much you have to direct yourself. And I really think that you really need to position yourself with others, not to necessarily tell your story, but to help get the story produced is what I'm getting at. You still own the rights to it. You still own, whatever, but make sure that you're doing it to where it's going to benefit other people, but also it's going to make it a lot easier on you.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I think a lot of times people like to say, oh, like if you do, like me, Chad, Eric Hawkins, a few others, like we literally do pretty much every part of the creative process. Yeah. However, we're still collaborating with other people. We have editors. Yeah. We have people, Chad and I both have Jeremy, who, we're working with him on marketing and getting out a good, trailer for the book and Kickstarter video. We've discussed like a campaign manager or someone kind of coaching you through. So you're not ever doing it all by yourself.
No. You may and I think if you do, it's a disservice. Yes. Not only to you, but to the people investing.
And you can't keep that up for very long.
No, you can't. You can't.
Yeah. We're not meant to.
I wouldn't expect you to. I wouldn't expect you to. You got to be a realist about it,
Yeah.
Not to take the wind out of your sails, but I'm just saying.
No, absolutely. That's the truth for everybody.
Yeah.
It's a community-based thing.
It is,
so.
For sure.
Both in finance and in distribution and production. It's a full journey. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny that, we're talking about this, about the network that we have, the people that are supporting us or collaborating with us and things like that. It leads perfectly into our next question, which is, we are all a part of the Rising Tide Network.
Yep.
But you specifically are a part of, I guess what you would call like we're all a part of the group, but you are a part of the Rising Tide Network in that you host and co-host shows under that umbrella. So tell us about that process. Like what was it like, and how you ended up hosting or co-hosting like 3, 4, 5?
4 shows.
on the network. So, yeah.
Well, it came about, it was basically blackmail. No, I was teasing. Brian K. Morris is there's very few men on this planet that I would consider doing exactly what he's supposed to be doing. We are all fortunate to be, I consider you guys that as well, but I think that there's very few of us that, and very few women for that matter, are really doing what they're supposed to be doing on this planet. Once you get to do what you're meant to be doing, it's awesome. And you know it and you feel it. And I knew that when I bumped into Brian online 2 years ago. The thing about Brian is that he's got such a contagious way of doing things. Pardon the pun, I know pandemic and all that, but he's very contagious. His eagerness to help people is infectious. Yeah. And when we were all this was happening January last year, I did my first video, Ted Draws Tikis, I think it was. And I started getting a few views and some things. I started plugging into what Brian was doing. I was watching it, but I was listening to it, but everybody that he had was like down in Illinois, Indiana, and I was the only one in Michigan, so I was just listening to it, and he had a pretty good following at that time. And he reminded me of Dr. Demento. If you guys ever, he reminded me of that voice, and I'm like, that's pretty cool. Yeah. So I was, it was wintertime up here, and so I was watching I wasn't going out and whatever. I was working at home, and I had it on the background. Then I started really listening to what he was saying about rising tide. What I was reared on JFK, and all the rising tide raises all ships and all that. So it resonated with me, and I think that that's a big part of. Your vibe attracts your tribe. I really think that is a truth. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so fast forward 3 months after that, started really seeing what he was doing. And then I started like, well, okay, I'm looking at what I'm doing. Okay, I'm drawing, I'm doing some things here. And then all of a sudden everything happened, the pandemic. So now that was 9 months or whatever. We were doing great. And we were the first show, all this stuff, one show in Michigan. That's all we had. And then the pandemic hit. And so nothing was happening. So then Chris and I sat down. I had a stack of books. I had things out, but not anything coming back yet, money wise. And I'm like looking at it. I'm like, okay, well, do we crack into retirement? What do we do? Yeah. And, I said, well, this first thing came to my mind. 20 years ago, if you would have said this to me, I would have said you cracked. I've always been like compassionate, but not like this. I said, how many people can we help right now? And how do we do it? And I think really that's because of Brian. I wouldn't have thought that really. Yeah. I would have thought, whatever, what they call the Sunday afternoon thinking, after getting home from church, that kind of, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but that kind of thing. You know what I mean? Yeah. Proximity. It would pass Monday morning. Right. But I'm like, what can we do? All right. So I've got a little bit of subscription, people are listening, and what if we start interviewing and then we kind of bounced ideas. Do I Kickstarter now? Because everybody's doing these Kickstarter things. Everybody's ripping on other people about their books and how bad they are. They're throwing comic books on this one show I'm watching now. I said, I really want to find out about the creators. I want to find out, if they had a newspaper route when they were growing up, or if what happened in their lives that was just complete crap that they got past, how they got past it. I think that would help more, because most of us are train wrecks. We're just very good at hiding it. Everybody's screwed in some way or the other, right? We're all a villain in somebody's story, right? So when you look at, I wanted to help people, and I'm like, okay, how do we do that with not telling everybody? I wanted to also show that their work is a byproduct of what they've gone through. That was the other thing. So I said, okay, so let's really pull at the heartstrings, find out what these people, the human side about it. And that's when it started. And then Brian, it really started with Brian saying, because he was always promoting me, and we, for whatever reason, I think it was in a green room, we were talking about one night, why don't we start a broadcast network? We can multiply our numbers quickly. Everybody else follow everybody else's YouTube channel, blah, 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 and go from there, you know, hint, hint. Anyway, what do you have, 10,000 subscribers? Anyway, forget it. Anyway, so that's basically how it started. So Brian's like, cool, do you want to be part of it? I'm like, yeah, I want to be part of it. So that was it. That's how, and literally handshake, we're ready to go.
Yeah.
And one thing about it is, you know, I vet, it took me like months to actually, I had to really tailor Brian for the show, because it took me months to get him to the point where it was suitable for kids to watch. You know, he's extremely Rodman. I mean, not Brian K. Morris. You.
My bad. Okay.
I had to vet him, but finally it worked out. With Brian K. Morris, it was very much. Ted he trusted me. He knew that I wasn't. He knew I had proper lighting. He knew I had a good mic that I'm not using tonight. He knew that he knew I had at least a decent backdrop, and I wasn't picking my nose, or I wasn't cleaning my ears on, you know what I mean? That he knew that there was things he could trust me on. I wouldn't get too, if I had any profanity, it would be labeled. And he also knew I had sponsorships, so he knew I wasn't going to do Harry Carey on camera.
Right.
So that was the first thing. So TED Talks was kind of launched at that point. And it was a series of other people that were included in that. Amy Hale was another proponent that was very, there's certain people I really like their styles of how they do things and how they really build their following and their writing and how they go to shows and how they, everything, the marketing side of it all.
Yeah.
And Brian's really, he's cautious about who he brings on. He doesn't want just everybody on there. He's been approached by tons of people, we all have now. And but there's a very, it doesn't want to get too big too fast.
Yeah.
Now I'm going somewhere with this, so hold on a second.
Yeah. So
I came up with another idea. Hey, would you mind if Carl Witzman and I ended up doing a cigar appreciation show? Yeah. Not because we want kids to start picking up smoking or anything like that.
I'll tell you what, if I die because I smoke a cigar, it's your all's fault. I just want you to know that, because this asthmatic, my gosh, every time you guys talk about the cigars, I'm like, oh, I want to do this. And if I do, I will surely die.
Yeah. Well, our disclaimer vehemently says, do not, if you have any limited capacity, don't.
Just change it directly to Brian Rodman. Do not smoke.
But even in that, it's a novice's way to make you feel like you're not. You can know about smoking. I don't even smoke on the show. Nobody's ever even seen me smoke a cigar, I think, on my show at all. But it's something to where I want people to feel like comfortable when if they ever want to go into a smoke shop in the future or whatever, they don't feel like they're just overwhelmed. Well, is this Cuban? What is it? And what's the? Yeah. Or I don't like that. I don't like people feeling uncomfortable. I'd never liked going into a room and feeling uncomfortable. And I would rather give you an arsenal a little bit of, a term or two or something. And that's just to educate. That's all. That's why Carl and I, and we only do it once a month. It's just to show people what you can do. And if you are a cigar smoker, great. If you're not, awesome. Either way. And everybody's an adult, you understand the risks involved. So there, that's it. And then when TED Talks Timepieces, these were really just because I had time during the day, and I wanted to make sure that we had locked in times, because one of the problems that we're having with some people we were having, not now, but it would be any time. They would just be on, and that would be it, and it was. And if I was going to do a live show, I wanted to make sure it was on, not on the weekends, because I like my weekends. Yeah. And when the weather starts getting warmer, if we're not at a Comic-Con, I'm going to be on the beach. So, that was, with Christine, I don't want to be, we've already got enough going on with her business. So, so TED Talks Timepieces was just more for me, basically. It wasn't for anybody else. It was just me talking about why I like watches and how geeky I am about watches and how you can get a good affordable watch without blowing the bank. And this is where you can do it and how, and if you want to watch, great. If you don't, great. I have
Once again,
I have more.
You're going to make me poor because of your show.
Sorry.
Like, you are so interesting on that
Would you
on
stop?
that show, man. No, I'm serious, and it
Thank you.
makes me really mad because I'm sitting there and I'm just like, I've never liked watches before in my life, and now I do, and it's just one more thing that I'm fighting myself to spend money on. But you are so intriguing in
Thanks.
in that show specifically. I mean, I literally like I don't want this to sound weird, and if it does sound weird, that's fine. But no, like if you know, like it's almost soothing and calming. Just your voice, how you describe the
That
watches.
is so weird.
I know, right?
That's really
Like
weird.
it's
I'm very
almost as
comfortable right
it's
now.
almost as weird as just having a bunch of your art right behind you all the time. And
Hey, I resemble that, right? So
yeah, but you have
this is
other
prime
people's
real
stuff.
estate, baby. So
Well, you have,
whatever.
no, you have other people's stuff there too.
Great
Look at
minds,
Chad.
Chad.
I do.
Chad's just-
Star Wars. There's Darth
Where?
Vader.
Where
And
is
Look at
behind
it?
it-
Vader's head,
Where?
man.
Thank
How
you.
badass is that?
Look,
He's got
okay, you
Vader's
have
head.
Vader's head, but
And-
it's in the very little
And right
corner.
here,
What? No,
anonymous.
that doesn't
Oh.
count. That does not count. You was hiding.
Yeah, if
That
you
was
can't
hiding.
tell,
Well,
it
that's the
doesn't
point of
count.
anonymous.
That's right.
Boo.
That's great.
Boo
Thank you.
that
I'll
man.
take it. I'll take that as a compliment. My biggest thing was I just didn't want people to feel that they've got to drop more than a couple $100 on a good watch. And I'll
Yeah.
teach them why.
Yeah.
I'm cheap when it comes down to it, but I also get very well made things that I know I'm going to spend a little bit of money on that are going to last.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was it. The Drinking with the Davies. I really want to see Christine get out of her shell because she's such just a
She
beautiful,
is too, man.
a
It's
beautiful
yeah.
soul, and once you get to know what she does with herbs and everything else, that she's been to school for in photography, and she's got such a wealth of knowledge that and I get to do a show with her, that's
Yeah.
even better. You know what I mean? So I'm just, it doesn't matter what my accolades are. I'm spoon boy or ice boy, when it comes down to that for the 30 minutes that we're doing. And that was something also culture. It's to show culture. It's not to show how to get plastered on the weekend. That's not what it was about. It's about to show and if you don't drink, that's cool too. It's just to show you that this is the history of dark rum. This is where the slave trade happened. This is what happened. People were traded with this alcohol. That's how ridiculous and sickening.
Yeah.
That, it's such a broad scope of things even though it's only 20 minutes, 30 minutes when we're on. And Christine doesn't tell me anything about it before we go. I know what we're doing. I'll do the thumbnails or whatever, and I know what we're making, but she has the full history gamut of the whole thing. And it's so cool to watch her blossom because I knew that's what happened. And Brian's like, yeah, she's done, I can see Christine talks timepieces and you're out, man. You're gone. But that's really cool. And I like that about you too, because I know that Robin she might be behind the scenes, and the one thing that I really liked was the Kickstarter launch that you guys did.
Yeah. We like to do
freaking
that every time.
awesome. That was so good.
Thank you. She's very good. She's very good on camera. Like we actually in season 1 of the
There she
Dastardly
goes,
Dingoes.
right back there. She's walking right behind you. Right. Somebody did. That was a ghost. Yeah, there she is.
That was
Hi.
terrifying.
Hi, Robin.
They're saying hi to you.
Perfect timing.
Yeah.
Perfect timing.
My gosh, that was scary because I did not know she was home.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We were just talking
We're
about
just
you.
talking about the wives. Yeah.
And we're talking about like Ted's wife and you and then Ted was like, well, there she is. She just walked behind you. And then I was like, what? And nobody was there. And he's like, well, somebody walked behind you. I was, my gosh. All right. My adrenaline's pumping. Let's go. All right.
Why is that bride floating in the cemetery? over there?
Why are them their gravestones lit up? What's going on?
Oh man.
Oh, good. We're recording still.
Hey.
Like I was saying, we're
Cameo by Robin. All right.
there you go. We're lucky, for that, because that's that's what makes it all worthwhile right there. So
Yeah. That's
pretty awesome.
man. Well, Ted, thank you, dude. This has been a great episode.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for hanging out with us. One final time, let everybody know where they can find you and your work.
TedDaviesArtistry.com is the one-stop shop. You can find everything there. After the Kickstarter's done, once this is moved on or whenever this is airing, you'll be able to buy copies of Grimm 101. We'll figure out the game plan of how that all works out. I've got a couple things I got to do with that. But anywhere, TedDaviesArtistry.com, that's the first stop. Then Ted Davies Artistry Instagram, Ted Davies Artistry Facebook. You get the idea. So,
Sure. Yeah.
Cool.
That's
Go
it.
wherever and type in Ted Davies Artistry and your
Yep.
face will pop up.
Absolutely. And the YouTube channel. Please subscribe and like and share, because that would be awesome, because I want to
Yes.
be a big boy like these guys.
Honestly, guys, his YouTube channel is great. All
Mhm.
the shows on the Rising Tide Network are fantastic. I'm actually a part of one.
Yes.
The Comic Book
You're-
Spectrum
it's a
every
fan-
Thursday.
It's my favorite show besides mine.
We
It's
have
my
a
favorite
blast.
thing.
Yeah, it's such a good show. So check out the Rising Tide Network. Check out Ted Davies Artistry. And thank you for tuning in to the Dastardly Dingoes podcast. Remember to hit like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Also hit that bell to get notified when a new episode airs. And as always, have fun, be safe, and unfollow Chad Nuss on all social media. Thanks for coming by, everybody. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.